I moved into apartment 3B on a Wednesday because that was the day my old life ran out. The kind of running out that doesn't make a sound, just a soft, enormous quiet. My job had thinned to nothing. My friends were busy becoming better people. The person I loved had become a silhouette that walked out of my door and didn't look back. So I signed my name on a stack of papers, took a ring of keys from a property manager who never smiled, and dragged 2 suitcases up a dim stairwell that smelled like rain on warm dust. Point 3B wasn't special. That was the point. It had a long hallway like a throat, scuffed white walls, a small square living room, a kitchenette in Apology, and a bedroom that faced the brick flank of the neighboring building so closely it felt like 2 faces forced together. The bathroom was so narrow I had to turn sideways to close the door. Everything was clean in the way that suggested other hands had tried very hard to erase other lives and only half believed they'd succeeded. The first night, I didn't bring much in. A suitcase of clothes, a dented kettle, a lamp without a shade because I kept telling myself I'd find one I loved and never did. I put the lamp on the floor in the living room, plugged it in, and watched its bulb paint a soft peeled circle of light over the empty space. I told myself I would sleep on the mattress the landlord had left, wrapped in plastic, donated by some previous tenant, still smelling faintly of someone else's clean sweat and pine cleaner, and start fresh in the morning that I lay there in the dark. I listened to the building discover me. Pipes muttered. A neighbor's television hissed and then went quiet. Somewhere a door sighed. A heavy elevator chain rattled. A faucet dripped a rhythm like a tired heart. The old brick outside kept the night close. The moon must have been out there, somewhere over the roofline, but nothing silvery touched my room. Only the little lamp in the living room, shining its circle like a coin left on the floor, and I didn't fall asleep so much as I let go, 1 finger at a time. And then, sometime after midnight, I woke because the wall beside my bed was breathing. That was my first thought, absurd and total, that the wall had lungs and was taking long, damp breaths. I sat up, hand on my chest, and realized the sound was the radiator, an old iron spine under the window. It ticked and the pipes clanked and air moved through them like a throat clearing. I let out a shaky laugh that didn't sound like me. "It's old," I told the room. "Old things make noises." I lay back down and tried to imagine other things. A list for morning, groceries, soap, a coffee mug that didn't look like a mistake, a rug. I fell asleep again, and then I woke for a second time because the breathing had learned a new trick. Point 3 knocks, the kind that don't apologize for being heard. 3, each a little softer than the last, as if the knuckles striking the other side of the wall were running out of belief that I froze, eyes open in the dark silence, and then the voice, from inside the wall, not muffled by plaster the way you'd think it might be, not blurred or distant, but right there, inches from the skin of the room, as if the wall were a thin sheet stretched over a mouth. "Can I come out now?" Every part of me went cold. I lay there as if the bed had filled with water and I had become a stone that had no right to move. Silence swallowed itself. Car hissed by on the wet street below. Somewhere a dog's collar jingled like a tiny bell. I waited. I counted my breaths. I realized I was holding them and I let one out through my nose. Slow, quiet. "Hello," I whispered, because something in the human body requires a reply when you're spoken to, even by a wall. Nothing. The sound of the building's old heart kept beating. I closed my eyes and opened them again quickly, as if sight could make morning come faster. That I did not sleep much. I did not get up to turn on the lamp, either. The darkness felt like a lid I didn't dare lift. That I in the morning. I laughed it away. That's a trick you learn when you have to be your own witness. I told myself it was the neighbor on the other side of the bedroom wall, drunk maybe, or talking to someone in a voice that happened to slide through a bad seam in the plaster. I knocked on the wall with my knuckles once, and a little chalk dust sprinkled down onto the baseboard. The sound came back to me with a hollow echo like a cup in a dry sink. Dano replied that I left for work, which was a warehouse with a lock that stuck and a boss who spoke to me as if he'd misplaced my name somewhere and was waiting for me to hand it back. I stacked boxes and counted inventory and tried not to remember the sentence from the wall, the way the word out had stretched, like a hand pressed under the skin. The second night I brought more in. Books, a blue bowl, a plant that had been with me long enough to look tired of me. I cooked pasta in a pot that I'd bought for someone else and eventually kept. I left the television on so the empty place that I lived in would fill with voices and canned laughter that crinkled like paper. I fell asleep with my cheek on the pillow and my face toward the wall because pretending to face your fear counts for something. Sometime after 1, I woke to 3 knocks, slow, patient, knowing. "Can I come out now?" the wall asked, a little hoarse, as if it had been whispering to itself for a while, practicing that I sat up. This time I was angry. Anger is an easier mask than fear. "Who is that?" I said, loud enough to claim space. "There's someone on the other side, right? Are you messing with me?" Silence. My voice sounded too big in the small room, like I'd inflated something and it was banging against the ceiling. I got out of bed, turned on the lamp, and stood looking at the wall. It looked back the way walls do. At eye level, a faint seam ran upward, a hairline crack that had probably been there since a summer when the building dried too fast or a winter when the brick constricted like a fist. It ran straight up to the ceiling like a pale vein. I touched it. The plaster felt cool and then, as if it was embarrassed for being touched, warmed that I went to the living room and found the cheap little hammer I'd bought to hang pictures I didn't own yet. I came back and tapped the wall, gently, mapping the hollow and the solid, listening for something that would tell me more than I already knew. The sound changed as I moved along the length of it, but that was normal. Studs and space. Old buildings contain 1,000 pockets. That's how they hold their breath. That I slept with the lamp on until dawn turned the room the color of unripe fruit. Nobody knocked during daylight. Isn't that always the way? On the 3rd morning, I found a note under my door. It was printed on cheap paper, the kind you buy because you've convinced yourself a pen isn't heavy. The building's letterhead, Eldridge House, resident notice. "We will be conducting routine maintenance on the heating lines this week," it said. "Between the hours of 12 p.m. and 4 p.m., you may hear tapping and see brief changes in water pressure and temperature. Thank you for your patience." I held the paper like a permission slip for my fear. "See," I told the empty apartment. "They're working. Pipes. Tapping." I pinned the notice to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a cat's face that I'd found at the bottom of a drawer. For the rest of the day, I listened for tapping. Every sound the building made was an explanation I chose to accept. That night, I left the bedroom door open and fell asleep on the couch with a blanket over my chest like a promise that I only half believed. The television showed a woman in a badly lit courtroom saying she had never met the man whose life was collapsing on the other side of the room. I woke to the slow roll of the end credits and the moment when the audio drops to the level of air. My throat was dry. I stood and went to the kitchen for a glass of water. I in the hallway, just between the living room and the bedroom door. I stopped because the air got colder in a way that wasn't a draft but an absence. The kind of cold that you step into as if you've been swallowed by breath. It touched my arms and the back of my neck and slid under the blanket like a careful hand. 3 knocks from the bedroom wall. I didn't run. Exactly. I walked very fast into the bedroom, hit the lamp switch with my palm, and stared at the wall as if I might catch it in the act of being wrong. "Can I come out now?" A whisper this time. The vowel hung like a drop of water holding on to a faucet. I gripped the hammer in both hands. "Who are you?" I asked, and my voice came out soft because that's what fear does when it gets tired of pretending to be bold. "What do you want?" A long pause, like the person behind the wall was turning a question over and over to see which side fit the hole. I want to be where you are, the voice said. Something fell out of me then. A kind of laugh that wasn't a laugh. I stepped closer. The hairline crack in the plaster had a pale dust clinging to its edges now, as if it had been worried by fingers, inside or out. My fingertip fit perfectly against it. The wall was warmer there. You can't, I said. This is a wall. I know, the voice said, as if that were the whole point that I took a breath. Another. Who are you? I asked again. I am the one you hear, the voice said, as if that answered anything. I am the one who knocks 3 times. It is the rule. What rule? 3 knocks, it said with patience. Then I ask. 3 nights. Then I am asked. I closed my eyes. I'm not asking you anything. The wall was quiet for a time in which a whole season could have turned. When the voice came again, it was softer, as if it had turned its mouth against the plaster. Can I come out now? It asked, almost polite. No, I said, and I hated the way the word trembled. No, you can't. Silence pressed the room into a smaller room inside it. Then you must come in, the voice said that I didn't sleep the 4th night. I am not sure if I breathed. By morning. I had done the thing you do when something makes no sense but refuses to stop. I looked for its history. I went downstairs and found the property manager's office. A room with a window that didn't quite close and a desk that was so old the veneer had separated like loose bark. The manager's name was Mrs. Grieger, and she had the kind of mouth that pinched words into coins she didn't like to spend. I'm in 3B, I said. I'm hearing something in the bedroom wall. Knocking. A voice. I know that sounds strange. Maybe it's the neighbor. She squinted up at me. 3B, she repeated, as if I'd told her a weather condition. She reached for a ring-bound folder, flipped to a tab, ran her finger down a list. No adjacent unit. The bedroom wall is the dividing wall to the old utility chase. A sealed cavity. That space used to be a dumbwaiter shaft before the renovation in the 70s. A shaft, I said. A space. Utility chase, she said. There are pipes. The old building had features. Things that go unused sometimes go strange in your head. You know? She smiled in a way that wasn't kind. We have no current maintenance behind that wall. There's no access. Don't worry about it. She tapped the folder closed like the end of a lullaby. Let the building settle around you. What was there before the renovation? I asked, hearing the hunger in my own voice. In that space. Old things, she said. The kind that get boarded up. Everything gets boarded up eventually. Then, more sharply, you sign the sheet about maintenance, yes? Yes. Then everything is in order. When I got back to the apartment, I pressed my ear to the wall. The space behind it felt like a throat about to speak. I made a decision I don't remember making. I would not sleep here again until I understood. I pulled my phone out and opened a voice recording app. I set the phone on the nightstand with its microphone toward the crack. I watched the red seconds climb. I waited. Nothing spoke until the sun gave up and slid its small weight behind the roof lines. Then, 3 knocks. I flinched hard enough that the bed groaned under me. The phone recorded the sound of my breath. I reached out with a hand that I had to look at to make sure it was mine and tapped the red button to mark the event. The wall breathed its silence. And then, can I come out now? The voice. Not old, not young, not male or female. The kind of voice you remember from a dream. Threaded itself through the crack and laid across the room like a ribbon. No, I whispered. I recorded you. I'm going to play you back. Play me back, the voice said. I have only been forward. I didn't move for a long time. Finally, because I needed the proof to be a thing I could hold in my hands, I hit stop, then play. The recording hissed softly. It caught the old building's many small bones, caught my breath, caught the dogs far away. It caught 3 distinct knocks in a row, human and hollow and real. Then it caught my voice, shaking. No, I recorded you. I'm gonna play you back. Then the recording caught a reply in my voice, my very voice. The tone, the little up tilt at the end of a sentence I can't unlearn. Saying, play me back. I have only been forward. I jerked the phone away as if it had shown me a piece of my own insides. I stared at the waveform on the screen. My voice again, stacked like identical rooms in a tower. You're copying me, I whispered to the crack. You're using my voice. Silence. Then, almost gently, I only have what you give me. I slept an hour, maybe 2, or maybe I held still long enough for time to mistake me for a person who isn't waiting for their own voice to come back to them. Morning pulled itself into being like a sweater that doesn't fit. The next night, I brought home a small chisel and a putty knife. I told myself I was going to widen the crack just enough to see what was inside, to reassure myself with pipes and dust and the bones of the old building. I told myself I would be careful, that I would patch it before anyone noticed, that there was a rational world and I could bite off a piece of it and keep it behind my teeth like candy to suck on when I was scared. At dusk, I taped plastic around the baseboard and the nightstand. I stood with the chisel in my right hand, the putty knife in my left, and listened to my heart count the seconds. It felt wrong to start before the 3 knocks. It felt like I would be interrupting a ritual I didn't understand. They came at 1:13 a.m. I know because I watched the numbers change. 3 knocks. Slow, patient, loving. Can I come out now? The voice asked. No, I said, lips dry. But I'm going to see you. The voice laughed, or it made a sound that had learned to be a laugh by living inside other people's laughter long enough to mimic the seams. It was not unkind, simply didn't know how. I pushed the chisel into the crack and twisted gently. The plaster gave like a scab. A thin curl flaked to the plastic at my feet. I worked slowly, following the line upward, then down, coaxing, widening. The apartment filled with the smell of dust that has never been dusted. My fingers turned white. My breath went shallow. Somewhere under the plaster, a layer of lath revealed itself. Thin slats of wood like ribs behind skin. I pried a sliver of plaster away and slid the putty knife between 2 slats. I peered into the dark slot I had made. Cold slid out and touched my eyes. I blinked. When my pupils steadied, I saw a void no wider than my palm and no deeper than my arm length. A shaft, yes, a vertical tunnel between floors, sealed, forgotten, empty as a throat waiting for a word that has been misplaced. I wedged the flashlight of my phone in the gap and let its light pour in. Dust like gray snow, a strand of spider silk that waved with a breath that didn't exist. Scratches on the inner surface of the lath, long vertical marks as if someone had dragged something hard and sharp up and down while waiting to be remembered. At about the height of my face, a word was carved, shallow but legible. Out and I stared at it until tears came for no reason I could argue with. I set the chisel on the nightstand. I leaned closer, my eye at the gap, my breath fogging slightly in the cold that lived there. I didn't think to be afraid, not in the way that would make me stop. The human desire to name the thing you fear is stronger than the fear itself. That is how you end up saying, "Can I come out now?" to a person whose name you've forgotten, from a place you cannot leave. Something moved in the dark, not the way a rat moves, not the way air does. A tiny shift, as if the darkness had leaned closer to be polite. "Hello?" I whispered, because what else is there? "I see you. I know," the voice said, inches away, with no body between us. And then, in my father's voice, exactly as he had sounded the day, he asked me why I was leaving the town I grew up in. He said, "Do you have to go?" My mouth fell open before I knew I was letting it. "That's not fair," I whispered. "You don't get to be him." "Who should I be?" the voice asked quickly, as if trying to please me. It slid through timbers the way a hand tests coats. A teacher from 5th grade, a radio host, someone I sat next to on a bus when I was 19 and afraid I was a person no one would love properly. "I am only what you give me. Be yourself," I said, and I heard the desperation in it. I don't know. Be you." Pause. Then, blank and earnest, "Help me be me." I widened the gap until it was the length of my forearm. Splinters freckled my knuckles. I reached in. My fingertips touched nothing but cold. I sank my hand to the wrist, then to the crease of my elbow, feeling for an edge, a latch, a hinge, a bit of metal, a forgotten door. Dust gathered on the hairs of my arm like a new kind of fur. "There's nothing," I said. "There's nothing here." "Then you must ask it," the voice said. "Ask what?" "The wall," it said, patient as a nurse. "It is the rule." I stared at the slats, at the word out, at the place where my own face hovered, pale and warped by the phone's flashlight into a ghost pretending to be me. "What do I ask?" "Ask it to let me out," the voice said, "or ask to come in. You must ask. That is the rule." "That's not a rule," I said, angry suddenly, tired of being carried by something I couldn't see. That's a trick. Rules are tricks you believe long enough," the voice said, and it sounded almost kind that I went to the kitchen and washed my arms and face over and over until the sink was gray with a color that looked like winter. I left the water running and watched its steam fail to fog the mirror. I thought of the property manager saying everything gets boarded up eventually. I thought of the building holding its breath. When I came back to the bedroom, the lamp had flickered and died. The phone's flashlight lay on the nightstand, pointing at the ceiling, making an oval of light like a door no one remembered to open. In the darkness of the shaft, something listened to my footsteps and did not speak. "Okay," I said to the wall, feeling ridiculous and true at once. "I am going to ask." Silence shifted as if it had turned its head. "Wall," I said, because saying the word made the thing in front of me both less and more powerful. "Can you let them out?" First, nothing happened. Then, so slowly I would have missed it if I hadn't been watching the place where my breathing made the dust move. The lath groaned. The sound came from lower down where the shaft spilled into the level below. A thin rush of cold air rose, tasted like cells left in a freezer. The crack I'd widened creaked along its length. A seam opening its mouth to say a word that hurt. I stepped back, heart knocking, and saw it. Not a door, not anything so merciful, but a second seam horizontal, about 6 inches above the floorboard, as if the wall had worn a belt long ago. The seam shifted. The plaster parted along a hidden line. A small rectangle, the size of a letterbox, rotated outward like a chute, and for a moment it looked exactly like a tongue that I gagged, shamefully at nothing. My eyes filled again. The rectangle hung open into blackness. Cold fell out of it in a slow, unspooling ribbon. "Thank you," the voice said. So close to my ear I shivered, as if a mouth had moved hair that I crouched, knees popping. The little opening was big enough for a small thing. A cat, a child's arm, a hand that I did not want a hand to come out of that blackness. I wanted nothing to cross the border that separated me from the version of the building that had rules. But I had asked, and begging the wall to take its mercy back felt worse. That is the strange geometry of fear. The map draws itself as you walk, and by the time you realize there is no right turn, you are already inside. A shape moved in the opening. I flinched, my body asking to be a door that could lock. The shape was not a hand. It was a little box, wrapped in brown twine that had been wet long enough to dry hard. It scraped against the edge of the opening as if the wall were giving back something it had kept for too long. That I stared. "For you," the voice said. "For asking." I didn't touch it. After a time, the voice added, like a child being careful with a secret. "The last one who asked left things in here, before the wall learned the rule. I can only give what is given." I reached out and placed my fingertips on the twine. It was stiff and brittle. I pulled gently. The box slid onto my palm with the weight of something that remembered what it had been. The paper was old, oiled with years, the color of tea. I set it on the bed and stood looking down at it as if it might tell me something before I forced it to tell me something else. I unwrapped it. Inside was a stack of photographs tied with a thinner, darker string. They were curling at the corners, their gloss turned to matte by time. I slipped the string free and spread them like cards. They were all photographs of rooms, hallways, corners, empty spaces with nothing to insist on them except a sense that they had been left in a hurry. In each one, if I looked long enough, there was a smudge, sometimes in a corner, sometimes reflected in a window, of something like a face that did not want the camera to know it belonged to it. On the back of the top photograph, in pencil so light it was almost a rumor, someone had written in block letters, "Ask nicely." I laughed, short and sharp. I wanted to throw the pictures back into the wall. I wanted to burn them. Instead, I stacked them and placed them on the nightstand, as if keeping them close might teach me a language. "Who left these?" I asked the gap. "The last one who asked," the voice said, careful and proud. "The one before you." "When?" I asked. "Before?" The voice said. That I slept in the living room again, head toward the door, the photographs stacked like a deck of incomplete futures beside me. Morning came with rain, soft and forgiving. I called in sick to the warehouse and listened to the rain talk to the windows in a language that involved a lot of pretending to be more than water. I examined the photographs again in daylight. In one, the corner of a wall had the word out scratched into it, a twin to my wall's mouth. In another, the shadow of a person fell across the floor, but there was nowhere that person could be standing unless they were inside the camera. In the last, a handprint smudged across a white door, as if someone had been trying to push through it in the wrong direction. I turned them over. Nothing else. Ask nicely. The pencil was smudged by fingers. Some of the graphite fixed like a fingerprint. I didn't know how to lift. I thought of leaving, of taking my things and throwing the key into a pocket I'd never reach into again. But leaving is an action you have to be able to imagine yourself performing. Couldn't. The wall had carved a small fear in me, and I kept my thumb on it because the pain told me something about where I was. That night, at exactly the moment I knew it would happen because knowing didn't protect me, 3 knocks came from the bedroom. I stood in the hallway and let them roll through me. "Can I come out now?" the voice asked, and it sounded, and this is worse than anything I could write, hopeful. "Yes," I said. The word came out of my mouth before I decided to say it. I heard it with the same surprise I would have felt if someone else had said it for me. But it was my voice. It was my breath. The shape of the syllable fit my tongue like a key. "Yes," I said again, because you cannot put a word back once it has been shaped. The little chute at the base of the wall swung wider. Something slid out, slowly, heavily, awkwardly, like a person trying to squeeze themselves through a window that wasn't meant for them. Not a person. Not at first. A bundle of cloth, stained a gray that tried to be white. It fell onto the floor with a sound like rain on a newspaper. Another bundle. The third. Then, at last, a hand, or the idea of one, thin as if made of the dust that had been breathing the cold for a long time, found the floor. It curled. I stepped back so quickly I tripped over the bed frame and fell, my breath tearing itself into pieces. The hand flexed. It was not the hand of a corpse. It was not anything I could recognize. It was a drawing of a hand, a memory of one, a mash of fibers and ash held together by will and hunger. It reached for the second bundle and drew it toward itself. The bundle unfurled into the shape of a forearm, then an upper arm. The hand attached itself the way a finishing thought finds the right sentence. The voice spoke with my father's voice and my voice and the voice of the child I'd once been when I asked to stay up past midnight because the dark felt like a secret I wasn't being allowed to keep. "Thank you," it said. "I will be where you are."
No, he whispered.
I crawled backward until my shoulders hit the far wall. No, 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 you can't. But it could. It kept coming, assembling itself out of the materials the wall had stored for it. Bundles that unrolled into ribs. A torso like a bundle of sticks that remembered skin. Hips that clicked when they met the floor. Legs that bent the wrong way and then corrected themselves, joints learning again how to be hinges. It built a body, not built, no, remade a suggestion of a body, the way fog learns to be a person when it touches a streetlight at 3 in the morning. It stood. And when it did, the room lost a dimension and then found another one. It wasn't tall or short. It wasn't anything I understood. Where a face should be, there was a map of all the faces I recognized, blurred one across the other so slowly that I could watch the changes. My father, my boss, the woman on the bus, the person I loved and lost, me. The eyes were closed. The mouth was a seam. "I will be you," it said gently, "unless you ask me to be someone else." "What are you?" I said. My voice sounded smaller than it had ever been. It tilted its head, considering. When its eyes opened, their color was mine. "I am the one who was left," it said. "I am the asking that had nowhere to go. I am the out that didn't know how." It reached a hand toward me and then stopped, the way a person stops when they remember a time someone flinched. "I don't want this," I whispered, and I heard the lie in it. "You can want and not want the same thing and be equally right." "You asked," it said. "No judgment, only fact." I answered. We stood there, two shapes in a room that had suddenly become crowded with the idea of a third shape. The wall. I thought of the photographs, of the whisper that used my voice, of the property manager's flat smile, of the rule. "What happens if we both stay here?" I asked. It considered again. Its mouth bent off-center in what could have been humor learned too late. "We can both be you," it said. "But that is not stable. I have been inside a long time. I could be the inside part for you. You could be the outside part for me. I don't want you inside me." "That is not what I said," it said, almost amused. "Inside the wall, outside the wall. We would exchange the positions of our asking." My mouth was dry as paper. "You mean I go in," I said, "and you come out?" "That is the rule," it said, and now it looked like me entirely, down to the small scar on my chin from when I fell on a curb the summer I was 8 and lied to everyone about the blood because I wanted to keep playing. It lifted its hand and touched the same spot on its face as if to remind me. "What if I say no?" It looked briefly like the person I had loved. "Then I go back," it said, and there was a sadness in its voice that stabbed a place I thought I'd covered. "And I knock again when the next one comes. And I ask, and I ask, and I ask." We both looked at the wall, at the mouth of the small opening, at the slit I had pried wider. Behind that slit was a shaft. Behind the shaft was a building. Behind the building was a city that had learned to ignore its own breathing. I stood up. My knees felt hollow. The thing that was me and not me stood very still, as if moving would break a part of me that mattered. "Will it hurt?" I asked. "Yes," it said honestly. I thought of the day I moved in, of the silence, of being a stone that pretends water chose it, of the way certain doors only open if you agree to become two people, the one who turns the handle and the one who steps through. "I don't want to be forgotten," I said. It smiled with my face. "Then don't be," it said, As if that were the simplest rule of all, that I walked toward the wall. The opening at the base was too small for me, but the crack I had made was not. With the chisel, I widened it higher, tearing the plaster in long strips that fell with a sound like breath being folded. I pulled slats free, their nails screaming. Dust rose like a blessing and settled on our shoulders like permission. Behind the lath, the shaft waited. A dark that was not empty but full of everything it had been asked to hold. I turned to the thing that was me. "If I go in," I said, "don't be cruel with my life." It blinked, and when it spoke, it did not copy anyone. "I only have what you give me," it said. I stepped into the shaft. It was tight. My shoulders brushed old wood, old brick. My breath came back to me immediately. The air smelled like coins kept in a drawer too long. I lowered myself until my feet found a 2x4 that had been left like a rung. Then another. The wall closed itself behind me, or else the idea of it did. Either way, the room became a square of light that I had to turn my head to see. The thing that was me leaned into the opening and looked in with my eyes. It lifted a hand in a gesture that could have been a wave or a blessing or a farewell, and then it stepped back. I heard it moving around the room, the way a person moves when they are deciding where to put their hands. The lamp clicked. My suitcase zipper rasped. The small sounds of living turned into an arrangement. From the shaft, the building sounds were the only sounds. Plumbing knocking in another floor, someone below me humming without believing in their song, the drip in the far corner that would eventually write its name on the wood. I slid down a few inches and felt the wall press me in like a parent tucking a blanket. Time is different inside a wall. In the first hour, I thought of everything. In the second hour, I thought of the rule. In the third hour, I found a space where thinking softened into something else. Something that watched the watching. I dozed, maybe. I woke when I heard footsteps in my apartment. The thing that was me was moving across my floor. No, not my floor. Its floor now, and in the tiny slit I had left, a sliver of light changed like weather. I don't know how long I waited. Could have been a night. Could have been a week, draped like a coat on a chair. I learned the conversations of pipes. I learned what the building says when it dreams. I learned how my own breath sounds when I don't try to hide it from anyone. Then one night, in the hour that feels like being held underwater by an old friend, I heard it. 3 knocks from the other side of the wall, from the room that used to be mine. I smiled in the dark, because ceremony is how you keep the person you are from falling apart. "Can I come out now?" I asked, and my voice, only my voice, learned finally to be only mine, slid through the seam, polite and hopeful, and waited for an answer I already knew. There was a pause. Then a voice that sounded like the best version of me, soft and sad and full of something like care, said, "Yes." The chute swung open. Something small and wrapped slid in and touched my knee. A box, a gift, a piece of a room I could no longer see. Choosing to be with me anyway, I untied the twine in the dark. Inside, I found a photograph. It was new, a picture of my living room as I had left it, except better. Tidier, kinder, warmed by a lamp with a shade I had never found. A plant that looked like it had finally forgiven me. On the floor, a shadow fell in a shape that looked like someone opening their arms on the back. Written in pencil with a hand that looked like mine on a morning when I had slept well, were 2 words. "Thank you." I rested my forehead against the cool wood and breathed. Outside, rain began, a low, steady whisper. Inside, the wall breathed back, and in the spaces between, something like peace uncurled. Up in apartment 3B, where a body that was not mine wore my days like a well-loved coat. The evening settled. A cup clinked. A chair scraped. Somewhere close to the ceiling, the faintest rhythm began. Tap, 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 quiet, easy, true. The old building remembering its own rules and, for once, being kind with them. 3 knocks are not a threat, I learned. They are an invitation. A question with two answers that make a circle if you draw them slowly enough. Point 3 knocks. Then a voice. Can I come out now? Yes. I said, only me, only this. You can.